So we're gonna go next to item 4, Faraday Avenue and Palmer Way intersection control evaluation. And we have engineer Alberto and Kim speaking.
Good afternoon. My name is Ed Alberto. I'm an engineer with the Traffic Engineering Division. And I'm going to present to you guys the results of an intersection control evaluation at the Faraday Avenue and Palmer Way intersection. And can you guys all see my screen?
Yes, you just need to start from beginning.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right. So recommended action today is to receive this presentation and support staff's recommendation. The intersection of Faraday Avenue and Palmer Way is located in the northeast quadrant of the city, just to the east of Faraday Avenue and El Camino Real. Some background, last December, staff was contacted regarding a request for a traffic signal installation due to collision concerns at the intersection. So staff executed a task order to Chenryan Associates to conduct an intersection control evaluation, or ICE. Looking at the existing conditions, this is Faraday Avenue. It's 2 lanes, eastbound and westbound. Palmer Way is located here, about 345 feet east of El Camino Real. And also to note that the property to the south has an existing full access driveway that is offset from Palmer Way that sort of acts as the southern leg of this intersection. So what is ICE? The intersection control evaluation, it analyzes the intersection for feasible control options for the vehicles entering the intersection. It then evaluates these options to determine if there would be any impacts to operations to the transportation system. The alternatives that were evaluated as part of this ICE was a roundabout and a traffic signal. Looking at the roundabout alternative, it was evaluated based on physical constraints, meeting Federal Highway Administration design requirements, and for traffic operations, looked at the 95th percentile queue. So the physical constraints, the FHWA requires an inscribed diameter of at least 105 feet. Within the existing right-of-way, Faraday and Palmer has approximately 85 feet that could accommodate an inscribed circle. I believe there's a question regarding a urban compact roundabout and if that would fit within this existing right-of-way. The inscribed diameter for that compact roundabout is a minimum of 80 feet. However, it should be noted that the design vehicle used for the urban compact roundabout is a single unit truck, like your typical UPS or Amazon delivery truck or a school bus. Whereas an urban single lane roundabout or a double lane roundabout, the design vehicle for those controls would be like your standard WB50 large semi truck. And there is a FedEx distribution center just to the east at the intersection of Orion and Faraday. So when looking at the physical constraints for a roundabout at this intersection, also keeping in mind that Faraday Avenue is 4 lanes, 2 lanes in each direction, a 2-lane roundabout would likely need to be analyzed, and the minimum inscribed circle for a 2-lane is 150 feet. When we look at the queuing, because Faraday Avenue and El Camino Real is closely situated next to each other, the westbound movement approaching El Camino Real, the queuing was looked at. And to show you a picture, the orange line represents the queue length for the westbound through movement from the limit line at El Camino Real that extends east beyond the Palmer Way intersection. You can see the circle within Palmer Way. The queuing would obstruct pretty much all the movements in and out of Palmer Way and to the driveway to the south in the AM peak hour. And so due to the limited right-of-way and due to the spillback from queuing for that westbound approach, the ICE does not recommend the installation of a roundabout to control the intersection. When looking at the traffic signal option, it was evaluated based on the California Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, traffic signal warrants. And for operations, they looked at intersection delay and also the 95th percentile queue. CA-METCD provides traffic signal warrants, and these are the minimum conditions under which a traffic signal should be considered. And just to note, as noted in the California METCD, the satisfaction of a traffic signal warrant, one or more of them, does not in itself require the installation of a traffic signal. And so when looking at this intersection, the 4 applicable warrants that were evaluated was the 8-hour volume, 4-hour volume, peak hour, and the crash experience warrants. And when looking at these, the 8-hour vehicular warrant was not met. However, the 4-hour warrant and the peak hour warrants were met. Getting into the crash experience warrant, collisions were evaluated between 2016 and 2020. The crash experience warrant requires that if there are 5 or more collisions susceptible to correction by the installation of a traffic signal over a 12-month period, that's how they determine whether or not the warrant was met. We did see in 2016 there were 5 collisions at this intersection. However, one of the collisions that was a failure to yield to a bicyclist was about 500 feet to the east at a driveway from this intersection. But the majority of collisions that were noted between 2016 and 2020, the primary cause was unsafe speed. When looking at intersection delay, Faraday Avenue and Palmer Way is an existing stop controlled on the side street. And due to the stop control, the level of service is currently LOSE in the AM and PM peak hours. Implementing a traffic signal at this intersection would improve the intersection operations to LOSC in the AM and PM peak hours. There is no change to the level of service at the El Camino Real and Faraday intersection. It would be LOSE in the AM peak and LOSF in the PM peak, regardless of the implementation of a traffic signal. When looking at the queuing, we looked at the westbound approach to the Faraday El Camino Real intersection, as well as the eastbound approach to the Palmer Way and Faraday intersection. And in this picture, you can see the westbound through movement for approaching El Camino Real, as you saw on the previous slide, extended 575 feet. The left turn, westbound left turn pocket exceeds its capacity, and the queue length is 240 feet. And looking eastbound, if we were to implement a traffic signal at this intersection, the limit line would need to be moved back to match the location of the driveway for the southern property, resulting in a queue of 220 feet spilling out into the through movement for eastbound. So due to the queuing issues on Faraday, the implementation of a traffic signal is not recommended at this time to control this intersection. When staff saw the primary cause of collisions being unsafe speeds, what we do recommend is the placement of advisory warning signs as drivers approach the intersection, to notify them of the curvature and to provide some advisory speed limit signs to reduce their speeds as they travel through the intersection. And to note that these are advisory travel speeds. These are not; these would not be new posted speed limits that are enforceable by the police department. However, they do advise the drivers that as they're navigating to lower their speed, and if there are collisions out there, it could be noted that the vehicles were traveling excessively for the conditions provided. With that, do we have any questions?
Here.
Okay, I am muted. I clicked there once, it wasn't lucky. Okay, thank you, Mr. Alberto. Do we have any questions from the commissioners?
Chair Gokun.
Yes, yes, Commissioner Wanamaker, you have a question?
Yes, is there any history or any ability to put a rumble strip around those proposed warning devices, for instance? It seems to me that when people get to that first curve going westbound on Faraday, they look at the light at El Camino and they naturally speed up to make that light if it's still green. I just think it's an unfortunate situation that exists there. If there's any way to help slow down the traffic, whether it be a road hump or some sort of warning devices, I don't think we're going to find a way around the excessive speed. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wanamaker. Does staff want to respond to that?
As far as rumble strips, we haven't incorporated that type of feature in Carlsbad. I personally have concerns about the noise that it generates. So I would rather support the warning signs for any sharp curves that the drivers need to be made aware of, as proposed by Engineer Edmund Alberto in his presentation. And I think the recommended speeds, were they, Ed, were they based on our ball bank measurements for comfortable speed?
Staff drove the curves several times with the ball bank device.
Yeah. So we have a meter, an indicator in our traffic vehicle that we use to base the recommended warning speed, and I think that's the appropriate measure to notify motorists that there is a curve that they need to account for.
Well, I think Commissioner Wanamaker's concern is not about the curb the drivers are having issues with, is seeing the traffic light going red soon and they're speeding up. So then they're not careful with any traffic coming into it from the tangent street. So is there, let's say we go with it right now, can we revisit if this was effective?
Could you state that again, Chair Gokin?
So if we approve this and these measures are placed into the signage and they're placed, can we revisit to see if the signage was effective, if this is enough to satisfy the safety at that intersection?
Yeah, we can evaluate the signage to see whether or not it's effective. Sure.
Okay. Commissioner Pensier and then Commissioner Linky, I see you. Commissioner Pensier?
After we install these signs, is it possible that we could measure the speeds again and possibly even reduce the speed limit? The speed limit's now at 40, 45, what is it?
I believe it's 35.
40.
The 40.
It's 40. Is it possible that installing these signs would allow you to reduce the speed limit again to 35 or so?
We'd have to look at to see where the existing speed surveys for that speed zone were collected, and whether or not the signage that we place has any effect on that location, and to determine whether or not added signage is a significant enough change to warrant a change in the posted speed limit. I'm not sure where that speed survey was taken for that official speed zone measurement. So we can check and do a measurement to see if that's possible. We're always looking for opportunities to lower the speed limit where it's supported by our speed surveys. But
So
usually,
revisiting this.
yeah, but usually if we have an existing speed survey, I don't know if signage, it's just by itself would have a significant enough effect to lower the critical speed.
Yeah, well,
Okay, I'm gonna go to,
I guess my question is, what we're counting on this to make it better, which means since most of the causes of those crashes that occurred are due to speeding, then that would seem to be an approach that we could take so that enforcement would be more effective. I mean, you know, the police are pretty burdened now just to be able to write a citation for somebody going less than 10 miles an hour over the posted speed. And so anything you can do to reduce that would make their job a little bit easier. Now you're not recommending at this time to provide, for example, the radar feedback signs to tell people how fast they're going?
Not at this point, but that could be a recommendation if the proposed signage is not effective. We could certainly consider that. But this request, just to let you know, was simply a response to a communication that we got was we want a traffic signal there. And so we did the studies to determine whether or not a traffic signal would be appropriate. And when we do that, we wanted to include analysis to see if a roundabout, we didn't want to just evaluate it for a traffic signal. We wanted to take a look to see if a roundabout would be appropriate. And based on the factors that Ed, our engineer, Alberto described, it's not a good location for either, due to the proximity between Palmer and El Camino Real.
Yeah, I guess the other thing I wanted to ask about was the fact that, you know, basically this whole area is so congested with respect to the fact that we have some right turn only lanes, left turn only lanes for the westbound traffic. And so we've had to squeeze the bike lane out of the picture to even provide 2 lanes eastbound. So the eastbound cyclists on an area where speed limit is 40 miles an hour, we've actually installed the sharrows in the middle of that lane. And you know, that's not real comfortable for cyclists at that speed. Yeah, so I guess is there some, I mean, is there some plan in the future to get more right of way for this street, or is it always going to be this, you know, narrowed down so much?
We'll take that conversation to our transportation engineering group and see if there's opportunity. Just based on what little I know, those, you know, properties are pretty much butted right up against the sidewalk there on either side of the street. And I don't know how feasible it would be to acquire right of way on that stretch, but we could have that conversation with our transportation engineering group to see if there's any opportunity there.
So maybe you could get.
Okay, so Commissioner Pensier.
Yeah.
This item is about intersection control, just the signal light. So we cannot discuss too much. We can bring it up at a different time. We don't want to sidetrack, right? Okay. And also with the 40 miles per hour, yeah, I see 3 hands. 40 miles per hour, I don't believe that the drivers, because of the the light being so close, I don't believe they come in at 40 miles an hour. But I do believe that Commissioner Wanamaker's comment is that they are speeding up, not necessarily reaching or exceeding the speed limit. just not paying attention as much as to the side streets coming in. So I saw 3 hands and I'm going in order. So I have Commissioner Linky next.
Thank you. I had a few questions on this one as well, related to what's been discussed. If you look at the collision history and the direction of travel and whatnot, of the 12 collisions in the last 5 years, 6 of them were due, at least 6 of them were due to unsafe speed, most in the westbound direction. And then I also noted in the Chen Ryan report, which I had requested a copy of, that they even put in there, which was remarkable to me, and this is a quote: "It was also observed that westbound vehicles along Faraday Avenue typically exceed the posted speed limit." So they made an extra comment, and it was alarming to me that it typically are exceeding the posted speed limit, which to me means that the majority of people are exceeding the speed limit. So I'm also concerned that just putting signs up, and I think Mr. Kim has already kind of acknowledged that putting signs up alone is not going to reduce the average speeds enough that the critical speed would allow us to reduce the speed limit. So I'm very concerned that if we have a traffic consultant telling us that people are typically speeding there, that just the proposed signage is sufficient. I don't know if anyone wants to comment on that. I have a couple more questions too.
Which report are you looking at?
So when we got the staff report, they didn't include the Chen Ryan report, which it was based on. So I had requested that. They then distributed that as in the second agenda that they distributed, and they included the Chen Ryan report that did the ICE evaluation.
Because Nathan sent us the traffic collision report. It only showed 4 collisions in the last 5 years.
Now there were 12 collisions. 6 of them, one of them was to be determined. 6 of them were due to unsafe speed. 5 of those 6 were in the westbound direction, and the Chen Ryan report says that people going westbound are typically exceeding the speed limit. So I'm concerned that something, that plus the citizen reports that there are collisions make me concerned. I don't know if there's any response to that, but I can go on and ask an additional question. So on top of that, the second most frequent concern is what I would call concerning left turns. So there's several failures to stop or yield by drivers that were taking left turns from either eastbound Faraday onto northbound Palmer, or southbound Palmer to eastbound Faraday. And then again, the Chen Ryan report noted that, see if I can find the quote, it said something about there were several unsafe maneuvers into the driveway to the south. So there's that driveway on the south side of Faraday that's offset from Palmer. And so they noted several maneuvers that were unsafe just during their brief time in the field looking at that intersection. So I have concerns about the westbound speed and left turns. It seems like there's some unsafe left turns being taken there. So I don't know. I kind of agree with should we put at least a speed feedback sign there? And or should there be a median put in somehow so that to minimize those unsafe turns or maneuvers, make a right in, right out only? That's probably exceeding the scope of what traffic wants to do, but I'm concerned about that. And then lastly, I would point out that back in 2014-15, when staff was coming up with their street typologies for all the streets in Carlsbad, they chose to make Faraday what they call a transit-oriented or transit street, transit/employment street. And by doing so, they did not put vehicles as a prioritized mode of travel. So technically, or not technically, the reality is that Faraday is supposed to be prioritized for pedestrians, bicyclists, and transit. And so I didn't agree with that typology at the time and spoke out against it. I think it was just an effort for staff to avoid the fact that there's failures occurring on Faraday. But now the bed is made, and I don't know whether it's time for us to lie in that bed and acknowledge that this street is not prioritized for vehicles. So to me, there's a lot of queuing analysis, which I appreciate and would agree with, and there's 21,000 plus vehicles in that segment of the street. And I think the city is expanding their safety training center that's just a few blocks away at the Orion Center, which may increase further the vehicle traffic there. But if we're going to encourage those city employees to be walking or riding their bikes to that safety facility, and all of the employers around there taking transit, if you look at all that, I don't know that we should be prioritizing based on queuing analysis, based on how staff has chosen to prioritize that particular street. So I'm looking for some feedback on all that.
Okay. Staff wants to.
Yeah,
answer
I
the
had a
three
couple of
questions.
comments. First of all, I greatly appreciate all the comments we're hearing, and that to me is the purpose of the commissioners meetings. So Commissioner Pensieres, you bring up good points, and we will take a look at the existing conditions and any opportunity to further implement bike lanes through those segments. And Commissioner Linke, you bring up excellent points about westbound traffic speeds and further analyzing the actual problem movements that we've seen out there. So while I hate to create work for ourselves, I would go with Mr. Kim's suggestion. And first and foremost, as Mr. Kim mentioned, our purpose really was to report back with the intersection analysis and to look at the warrants for the intersection. And we didn't feel that they met the warrants. And then we took the next step and looked at if a roundabout was an acceptable alternative. But hearing all the additional comments which we've heard, I don't think we're really done. So I would agree with Mr. Kim's comments to recommend us moving forward with staff's recommendation, which is the implementation of the signs. And then we can go and further study the issues which you brought up, your comments, and any changes in traffic operations out there with the new signs, and then report back to the commission, say within a year.
Okay.
So that would be my recommendation.
I'm going to go to Commissioner Hunter, and then I'll come back to you, Commissioner Linke.
I was just running through the same things that Commissioner Linke was. And when I look at the Chin Ryan report, it shows 85th percentile is 43 miles an hour. So, I mean, I think we're right there at 40, not significantly over the speed limit as far as that goes. I support the staff's recommendations. I've looked at that intersection a lot. And again, it's as Commissioner Linke pointed out, it's unsafe speed. So it's, that's where we get a lot of our deals from. So I had something else, but Commissioner Linke already covered it. Just adding my comment back into that, and over to Commissioner Linke.
Thank you. Commissioner Linke?
So I want to get out of my lane just for like 30 more seconds and say that it was interesting to note also in the traffic count data that, and there were traffic counts for vehicles, pedestrians, and bicyclists at both the Faraday El Camino Real and the Faraday Palmer Avenue, Palmer Way intersection. And in both cases, there were thousands and thousands and thousands of vehicles and basically a handful of pedestrians and bicyclists, maybe five bicycles or pedestrians, and 3,000, 5,000 cars going through those intersections during that same period of time. So 99.7% of the traffic there is currently vehicles, yet it's prioritized for bicycles and pedestrians. And the bus stops there, which it is a transit corridor, less than one boarding per day at the transit stops there. So we have a lot of work to do if we're going to make that into staff's envisioning that as a transit, pedestrian, and bicycle mecca when we're looking at 1 to 5 of those alternative mode users and thousands and thousands and thousands of cars with it and with a city facility there. But with all of that said, I would move that we support staff's recommendation for the signage, but that we also recommend that the area is that speeds are monitored in that area, and that we revisit a larger project there for safety, as espoused by Mr. Frank.
Okay. Do I have a second for that motion?
I'll second.
That was a motion, right? Commissioner Lindsay?
Actually, Chair Gokin, I'd like to add a comment before the motion.
Okay, Vice Chair,
Yeah, so
go ahead.
I think on the side with Mr. Frank and Mr. Kim, I have nothing against this, but the only thing that I would like to kind of bring up is that we come back to this this area if we do give the approval. And the reason why I say that is this area is growing. I know that on Palmer and Cougar, which is off of Faraday, there is a new housing development that has just been created, which is I think a senior living. And then also down Faraday towards El Puente, you have another assisted living. And also to the other side of it, you have Amazon's parking and distribution. So there's going to be more traffic, more population coming in there. So, you know, to look at this in a year, I don't know if we get this through. I think this is something that we should look maybe quicker, just because of the new housing that's coming in. There's going to be new people coming through, new pedestrians, and more traffic. So that's just my input.
Okay. Commissioner Linke, do you want to restate your motion?
I move that we support staff's recommendation for the signage changes, but also to recommend that speed data be collected to ensure that it's working, and that staff, and also recommend that staff investigate a more comprehensive project there to address the safety and traffic concerns.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Commissioner Linke made the motion. Commissioner Pensier seconded. Can I go for a vote?
Commissioner Wanamaker,
Aye.
Commissioner Linke,
Aye.
Commissioner Fowler,
Aye.
Commissioner Pensiers,
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Vice Chair Perez,
Yay.
Chair Gokin.
Yes. Please note that it passed unanimously. And Ellie, it was clear, right? For you,
Yes, was clear.
the motion? Okay.
Yes, the motion
Good.
was clear.
We're
Thank
gonna
you.
move on. Thank you.